that. Aman, you must take us through some of these key highlights of the documents, court documents we've accessed. To begin with, everything started going wrong with that narrow argument that CBI was leaning on, that an MLA is not a public servant under Section 21 IPC. That in itself weakened the application of graver charges that could have been slapped back then.
Well, yes, Kritsveer, and I'm taking you back again, as I was asking Mr. Vikram Singh, to this 2019 trial court judgment, which is becoming now very, very crucial. The High Court, in fact, has depended on it in a way to dismiss the charges that, Mr. Sengar is a public servant. Now, look at what happened in 2019. The victim's family goes to the trial court saying that invoke sections 376(2) and K of the IPC, because under IPC these sections can surely be invoked because Mr. Sengar was in a position of power. Look what the CBI says to court. When the matter reaches the court, the CBI says we are not relying on such provisions. They very clearly tell the court we are not relying on such provisions. They are not backing the victim's application. In fact, the learned senior public prosecutor for the CBI, and I read it out, made his submission against the applicability of provisions in question, saying that the present application is non-est in law. So the CBI is going and telling the trial court that whatever the victim family is saying about adding provisions to the case, they are not supporting it, and that is what the High Court has now captured in its order. It says, it cites this particular trial court order of 2019 to say this particular sections were not supported by the CBI. So when the prosecuting agency is not supporting these additional charges, see what happens now. The court even strikes down the POCSO Act. And I would also read out to you two clear submissions made out by the victim's family, which basically raised big question marks over the CBI. I read out to that HC points to the trial court observation. The High Court is saying, High Court is pointing to the trial court observation that it is an inescapable conclusion that the investigating officer of the CBI did not conduct a fair investigation, resulting in a disadvantage in the case to the victim and her family members. Look at what the High Court is saying, that the CBI investigating officer did not help the case of the victim's family. It also says that the IO of the CBI, which is the investigating officer of the CBI, worked in collusion with Mr. Kuldeep Singh Sengar in order to ensure that the relevant evidence regarding the age of the victim never sees the light of the day, and instead the fabricated documents prepared by Sengar were produced before the court. So these are serious observations in the Delhi High Court judgment, raising question marks on the CBI, how it has handled the case from the trial stage itself, and now in the High Court, when the CBI itself says that, the public servant, Mr. Sengar is not a public servant as per an earlier Supreme Court judgment, but asked the court to still, look into it. It is in way surrendering the arms even before the matters in the High Court began.
And let's zoom out, in fact, Mr. Singh, let's zoom out and see what this kind of a judgment, this kind of a probe, in fact, does overall. What it does is, with the life sentence now seeing a suspension, there is an active risk of erosion of public trust in the justice system. That's the one thing which is being looked at, which is being spoken of, being argued against so heavily the last few hours.
My first opening remark would be, I must compliment Aman, you and your channel, for exposing the ugly truth behind the judgment and the unsparing remarks by the Honorable High Court in respect of the CBI. There are horrible fault lines in what has happened because the credibility of the CBI has taken a beating, and it will be difficult to recover from that shock and trauma now. Because what the CBI said, that he seems to be investigating in favor of the accused. And again, I would repeat what Mr. Aman has said, that he seems to be working at the behest of the accused Sengar. And that to a perverse, a Frankenstein monster. And whatever the High Court has said, I feel that the IO needs to lose his job. In such strictures, either it was an adverse entry with withholding of the integrity certificate. In this case, I must say that he needs to, be shown the door. Such people have no place in sensitive investigating agency on which the credibility of the entire organization was based. This was a high-profile case, and I'm disappointed that it must have seen the supervision at multiple levels. I would also go a step further, that they should investigate the supervisory officer where they're sleeping over the files. They were as complicit as the IO himself, because the compulsions now, I think, pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are now falling in together, and the entire picture is that the lady prosecutor was perhaps summarily asked to leave because she was pursuing the case vigorously. And therefore, you are very right, it will be difficult to recover from the shock. Everybody was complicit and collusive for Sengar.
Yogita, I want to ask you this, because the story going forward now is being looked at? What happens to the victim's family? A certain terms and conditions have been set by the Delhi High Court. But what safeguards you think must be ensured so that the victim or the witnesses are not intimidated after such a questionable relief is granted? Despite these terms and conditions, is there a larger fear being looked at?
See, her life is on constant threat. Not that just we are saying it because she has experienced this, such a horrendous accident where she was the only one who survived and she was in hospital for so many months. So her husband was attacked last month. They came to her house, in-laws' house, and asked her to compromise. And then when husband and she refused, he was beaten up brutally by 4 men for no reason. So there is a constant threat and evidently there. You know, it's not that she's trying to say anything because I've been associated with her since her accident days. And we were trying to get her back to the life. We gave her some skill trainings and she was seemingly very okay now to live, life without fear because it was very difficult for her to come out of that. Now she was happily married with 2 little children. She wanted a normal life and suddenly this happens. Her mother, her security cover was withdrawn. Only she has the security cover. For how long, we don't know. Mother doesn't have the siblings. She has 4 siblings where they are staying without security cover. And it is not that it has not happened. So there is a constant threat and mentally she is definitely, I would say, disturbed.
Yeah.
Her husband is disturbed. They are suicidal. Honestly, when she was in the court,
and which explains why
she
we've
called
seen the
me
victim
that this
also
has
reach out to the leader of opposition. So there's those kind of interactions and meetings that have been taking place as well. That's all the time we have, Mr. Singh. Yogita, thank you so much for joining us with all those details. Aman, thank you for taking us through those exclusive documents. Heading into a very quick break with that. We'll be right back in just a bit.